Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of June 7th, 2022. And this is officially episode number 518. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons. And we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. Let's kick it off with some cryptid stuff. We haven't had much in the way of cryptid news, but this weekend, say this past weekend, June 5th, was the 35th anniversary. Boy, do I feel old. The 35th anniversary, June 5th, 1987, of the Harry and the Hendersons movie. Don't tell me you don't remember that. 35 years, my goodness. It just seems like last year that movie came out. Boy, oh boy. It's the, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the highest grossing Bigfoot movie to date. Probably not the highest grossing cryptid movie to date. That might be, what would that be? Mothman Prophecies, I'd have to guess. Maybe Godzilla could be the highest grossing cryptid movie of all time. But unfortunately, I think Harry and the Hendersons made just less than $50 million back in 1987 between domestic and international money. Not horrible. I think it peaked out at number 3, if I do remember correctly. I don't know what that would translate to in 2022 dollars, but it came opening weekend. It was third behind Beverly Hills Cop 2 and The Untouchables. Beverly Hills Cop 2, my goodness. I really feel old. Man, oh man. But yeah, the highest grossing Bigfoot movie. There's a lot of Bigfoot movies. I think there's at least 50 if you count them up. And of course, you know, we talked about movies on this show before. It seems it's pretty obvious, I think, that alien-based movies far outsell cryptid movies. You don't have to look too far. The entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is all based on aliens. Even stole Thor from our, folklore and made him an alien. And of course, you have DC, let alone all the Star Wars stuff going on, Star Trek, if you remember all that. You can even throw Transformers in there. But what does cryptozoology have, movie-wise? Godzilla, like I mentioned, American Werewolf in London and Paris, I suppose. I mentioned the Mothman Prophecies, Silver Bullet, one of my favorite cryptid-type movies, werewolf-type stuff. But yeah, looking at cryptozoology overall, probably not money-wise, but overall, the volume of movies, it's owned by Bigfoot. But I think it's they're all independent stuff, and that's the reason why you don't see anything major, except for Harry and the Hendersons, which was, what was it, Universal that did that? Or Paramount? I forget who did that, but you had Rick Baker. You had... what's his name from Chewbacca played Harry and the Hendersons. So yeah, it wasn't a small production. It was a big time production, but that's it. 1987, 35 years. Thought it was cool. Very excited. Also this weekend, I should say Friday, technically Thursday, is Jurassic World Dominion is making its debut. I watched I don't really ever watch those red carpet things, but I don't know why. Just had to watch it last night. It's a big moment for me. I was a big fan of the book, which I already knew at the time was being developed into a movie. I read the book twice. before the movie came out, and I was one of those people yelling at the movie, saying how that wasn't in the book for the 1983 Jurassic Park, or I should say 1993 Jurassic Park. Yeah, 6 movies now. It's crazy. And it's almost like the last 3 were just basically a reboot of the first 3. Am I wrong? That's how I feel. Jurassic World Dominion this Thursday, and I'll be there at 4 o'clock opening here in my area. And I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. One could honestly make the case that this is a cryptid movie. Technically. Dinosaurs don't exist. They shouldn't exist. We've created them. And granted, 65, 66 million years ago, they would have lived here in the United States. Some of them, not all of them. Someone, we could ponder that. Would they be considered cryptids? And I've really enjoyed, I don't know if you've seen the social media behind this movie. They're showing dinosaur sightings from all around the world, kind of getting in the spirit of the movie, which I thought was pretty cool. A lot of those came from the movie short Battle at Big Rock. You can watch that on YouTube, which is pretty cool. You kind of get a preview of what this movie's going to be about. Now, I would say it's pretty close to what we're going to see from what I've seen with the previews. And you don't have to look too far. So the highest grossing movie franchises, again, I'm saying the alien stuff outranks cryptid stuff. Number 10 franchise, Peter Jackson's Middle Earth. So that's all the Lord of the Rings movies, Hobbit trilogy, based on the Tolkien novels. So number 10, Star Trek. Number 9, I grew up watching those movies, the old school stuff, and the new stuff is pretty cool too. But number 9, and Jurassic Park. You'd think they'd be a lot higher, but they're sitting at number 8 on the all-time franchise list. But that's going to change with this movie, no doubt. Another chapter, even if it's the final chapter, which I doubt. They've made so much money, there's no way you're just going to hang that up. Probably going to thrust them at least into number 7. I don't know if they're going to hit number 6, but number 7 is the X-Men, which you could say that's a lot of alien stuff on there. Yeah, it's mutants. There's some alien stuff in there too, right? Harry Potter, number 6. It's like $3.7 billion. It's a lot of money. Spider-Man, number 5. That's going to continue to grow. Batman, number 4. That's going to continue to grow. James Bond, number 3, all-time on the franchise list. Highest grossing franchise, number 3. Number 2, Star Wars. And that's just talking about box office. So that's movies. So if they're going to move away, just like Marvel seems to be moving away from movies, that's going to shrink. And speaking of Marvel, Marvel is number 1. Marvel Cinematic Universe, number 1. $10.5 billion. That's insane. That's a lot of money. So, yeah, movies. I could talk movies all day, especially paranormal type movies, cryptid movies, alien movies. It's very exciting. But yeah, I wonder if anybody's really thinking about Jurassic World being anything such as a cryptid book. And if you read, or a cryptid movie, if you read the original book, it does kind of feel like a cryptid novel, because I want to ruin it. Well, it's been out for 30 years, so if you haven't read the book, shame on you. But it opens and ends with this mystery of dinosaurs being spotted in society, and it's kind of a cover-up. But you'd wonder if that really happened, would we be talking about it on a show like this? Dinosaur sightings. I mean, we do talk about dinosaur sightings, so I would assume that if Jurassic Park would have been real, it would have been covered on shows like the Paranormal News Insider. And speaking of Bigfoot, to kind of wrap things up, Bigfoot is big this summer. Not in the movies, but in events. And I just updated the event site for early June. There's a few that I missed. I know there's a lot more that I totally missed out on in probably April and May. It just seems like, I don't know, they're just not out in front like they used to be. If that makes any sense. But a few just got kicked my way the last few days. One event I just added actually takes place this weekend, June 10th through the 12th in Marionville, Pennsylvania. It's the Forest County Bigfoot Festival. It takes place right in the smack dab in the middle of one of my favorite places to hike, camp, and went kayaking there. Gosh, was that a couple of years ago now? 2-3 years ago? Good grief. And that's the Allegheny National Forest in northwest Pennsylvania. Awesome place. The keynote speaker there is also a friend of mine, Amy Boo. She spoke at my conference that I held a few years ago. BFRO investigator. Another event also this weekend is the Alabama Bigfoot Conference in Oxford, Alabama. You can meet Cliff Berkman and Ken Gerhard, a couple of really, really nice, grounded, down-to-earth guys. I had the chance to meet them a few years ago as well. I think that's it. So check out the list of conferences, conventions that I have at paranewsinsider.com. Click on the events tab at the top. And if you know of any conferences, conventions that I missed, because I can't get them all, I need your help. It's a participation type of thing. So if you go to that list and you see some that you're going to, or you know of, or you're putting on, just let me know. You can email me at insider@paranewsinsider.com. Probably the quickest way is just message me on Facebook. I'm fine with that. It's okay. I get those all the time. For all sorts of stuff. Work, home, personal, everything. That's why I throw my phone in the garbage half the time. Anyway, no, just kidding. Let's roll it off with some cryptid news. We'll keep the Bigfoot train rolling, whatever that means. Let's just go with it. Cryptid news. And yes, I couldn't go another week. We went 2 weeks without a cryptid story. And I just couldn't keep going with nothing cryptid. Since the kids are either out of school or just about out of school, depends on where you're at, I suppose. People might be thinking about taking a road trip or a vacation. I don't know. That's weird. I finally took my first vacation earlier this year. First one I took in 2 years. So I get it. You got to get out. You got to go somewhere. And if you're like me, sometimes you try to take that vacation and add a little bit of paranormal stuff to it, just to kind of enjoy a little bit of stuff. I'm always looking at, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to look at what's paranormal there that I can check out, or maybe there's something that I've wanted to see, and maybe I can mix in a vacation around that. It's tricky. I should go into the vacation planning business. Here in Ohio, about a half hour away from the Kenmore area, which is home to Ohio's Grassman. It became popular in the 70s and again in the 90s. Let's see, about 45 minutes from Orange Eyes, which is spotted near Mansfield, Ohio, which of course has a lot of ghostly stuff attached to it. Also about an hour away from the Sasquatch Triangle, as well as Minerva, home of the Minerva Monster. About 3 hours away from where the Cedar Bog Monster was seen. And that's also close to where the Wild Man of Enon was spotted. All of those are Bigfoot-like creatures. And, of course, we have a lot of other cryptid excitement here in the Buckeye State as well, in addition to the Bigfoot type creatures. But let's go to Sutton, West Virginia, over the border down there in the mountains, the mountain state of West Virginia. Sutton is home to the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum. Recently, the topic of an article on WCHS-TV out of Charleston, the Capitol. It's got a nice little Capitol building. Go slow if you're going through on 77. It's only, I think it's 50 miles an hour. Don't speed. But check out the Capitol building. It's all gold. It's really cool. The article highlights the museum that is home to some interesting evidence. Laurel Potolicchio, who is the co-owner of the museum, she says, quote, "We have a whole book of eyewitness accounts. It's pastors, prison guards, and everyday Joes who are seeing this. These are all original casts from West Virginia." So they have sightings, books of sightings, and also casts that you can check out, you can look at. We actually have a hair sample that's been DNA tested. It came back as an unknown animal. It's amazing how many people, especially from West Virginia, that have come in here and have shared personal experiences. I'm shocked. I was not a believer when we started this, unquote. The museum is free to enter and is located at 400 4th Street in downtown Sutton. So that sounds big. Yeah, you might miss it, downtown Sutton. Well, not really. Downtown isn't very big, and if you're going too fast, you'll end up down the street at the Sutton Dam. It's a very small town. It's probably like 15 buildings in total. So you're going to see it. Don't worry. Sutton is located in Braxton County, West Virginia. And if Braxton County sounds familiar, you might remember the Braxton County Monster, which is also known as the Flatwoods Monster, the strange sighting of a giant creature, or it could have been an alien. Flatwoods itself is a short 6.5-mile drive north. It's pretty close to Sutton. But you won't have to leave Sutton to learn about it, as it's home to the Flatwoods Monster Museum. That's been on my list to go see for quite a while, and I've just never had the time to squeeze in when I go through that area. It's a nice 2-for-1 paranormal special. Now that I know the cryptid spots there, geez, the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum and the Flatwoods Monster Museum right there on the same street, pretty much in walking distance. That's pretty cool. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can take the it's a 127-mile 2-hour trip. So it'd be, was that 75 to 77 north to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And of course, that sounds familiar. It should. We've already talked about it. Mothman, home of Mothman. Lots of museums there. It's also a lot of historical stuff to see there as well. So we got a question in chat. What's the biggest park in Ohio? I'm not sure what you mean by park. Like park, like we have the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We have a national park here in Ohio. It's literally down the street from me, about 15, 20 minutes away. I can get to the national park. And that national park is home to a couple of cryptids, a lot of ghost stories. One pretty popular cryptid, unfortunately, they stopped celebrating it a couple of years ago. The Peninsula Python, which is a giant snake that was supposedly on a circus train that escaped. But, yeah, they don't celebrate it anymore. They used to have a little parade. They had a little giant boa constrictor float thing. But, yeah, they don't, they just kind of stopped doing it for some reason. It's rather sad. I'm about 10, 15 minutes away from there. So, yeah, I'm pretty close to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Some of the other big parks, of course, big one is down south. If you're going to if you're going to look for Bigfoot or anything like that, it's the Wayne National Forest south of here. It's probably the second best place in Ohio, next to the Sasquatch Triangle, which is a little further north of that area to look for Bigfoot. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I'm surrounded by woody areas here in Ohio. Lots of cryptid stories, lots of UFO stories, and of course, lots of great places to go investigate for ghosts. But UFOs, well, that's next up tonight. And, we talked about the congressional hearing. That's been a big deal. So there's been a pretty big focus on UFOs, and people are, I think, paying a little bit more attention to their surroundings now. So I kind of expected a lot more stories to pop up. And I don't know if I've seen an influx, but I've seen a few more logical ones. So ones that I don't understand how people are confusing what they're seeing with a UFO, or people are just jumping to that conclusion because it's popular. But that's not always the case. We've got a couple of really strange ones. And one that I want to share with you tonight happened late in the evening on Wednesday, June 1st. Kimberly Slover heard a knock on her door at her home in Woodlake, California. When she opened the door, she saw her friend Victor Chavez wanting her to see what he had been seeing in the sky, which he claimed was a spaceship. It's never a good way to open up a conversation. Come look at the spaceship. Because you're already putting thoughts in that person's mind. But that's okay. You're excited, and I get that. Slover grabbed her cell phone and recorded what she described as a round-like disc on fire in front and back, as it was around the edges of disc. That's a quote. That sounds funny. That's a quote. She further explained to Fox 26 KMPH, quote, I recorded a red spinning disc and maybe a hole in the middle, unquote. Weird. Strange sighting, and we'll try this week. I had some problems last time uploading some pictures. So if you're live in chat, I'll show you a little preview of this. Of course, anybody can Google stuff. It's not that hard. You can find it. There it is. You can find stuff pretty easily if you just Google the Kimberly Slover, California UFO. It'll pop up. This is all over the place. Probably as far as UFO sightings in the last week, it's probably, well, it's number 2 now. There's another one that we'll talk about here in a second. So yeah, a red spinning disc. So if you see the video, it's pretty telling. The picture doesn't do a whole lot of justice, but you do see like an orange circle, and you see like a little black hole in the center of it, and there's little streaks coming out of it. But if you watch the video, well, I'll tell you here in a second. So Slover recorded the object for about a minute as it disappeared and reappeared. The object then turned to a white spinning object after the orange glow went out. The two stated that they were looking southeast. So southeast from Woodlake, California. Woodlake is central. It's slightly north, but it's still kind of in central California. So that kind of tells you what direction they were looking southeast toward. It would still be California, but close to Nevada. Would be a little further west from where they were standing. The object disappeared, like I said, disappeared or reappeared. The orange glow went out. So Fox 26 reached out to Vandenberg Space Force Base. So weird to say that. So used to saying Air Force Base. Vandenberg Space Force Base in Santa Barbara County, and stated that no launches were scheduled. I was confused because I know where Vandenberg Space Force Base is. It's actually in the opposite direction. It's well, I should say opposite, but not in the right direction. It's southwest of Wood Lake, not southeast, and it's along the coast. So it didn't make sense to me once I knew where South Lake, or I'm sorry, Wood Lake was. I realized that they were looking in the wrong direction. So Edwards Air Force Base would actually be southeast of that location, pretty close, and it could explain what they saw. However, it's pretty far away from their location. I don't know the exact location, but from Wood Lake to Edwards, I think it was about 120 miles, but depends on what they were seeing. If it was an aircraft, if it was closer, if it was flying toward the base from their location. But in my opinion, if you watch the video, it's pretty telling. You can see the orange is some sort of an exhaust. You could see the little streaks coming out of the that orange area, and you'll see that in the video. It just looks like it's spitting out fire. So to me, it looks like some sort of exhaust from a jet engine. Could be a single engine jet, probably not a commercial airliner. That's why I'm thinking Edwards would have been a good base to contact. Could have been the F-35 Lightning II, which has been tested for years at Edwards, including the weapon systems. So it could also be a rocket launched from something. Now, there were no rocket launches in the area, no rocket launches at all on the East Coast, or the West Coast, or the East Coast for that matter. So it wasn't a rocket per se. You would have never seen that angle from the ground anyway, unless you were kind of standing underneath it launched from that, because that's a pretty low angle. So to me, that looks like a jet aircraft of some sort, probably a fighter, probably not a single engine commercial type jet like a Learjet or anything like that. Could also have been the 5th generation fighter, F-22 Raptor. It's also tested in that area. Either one of those aircraft at the right angle could be responsible for what they saw. Though again, 120 aeronautical miles between the two locations. So that jet would have had to flown for a good 15, 20 minutes closer and then turned around. They still could have seen it, though, at a higher elevation. So I wouldn't state that this would definitely be some sort of UFO type of thing. Could be more closer to a UAP, I guess, although it's not really a drone type object, but unidentified. But I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that that's an alien type spacecraft. Now I've seen commercial jets fly about half that distance, 50, 60 miles, flying over Lake Erie. Granted, I'm not looking at their exhaust. I'm looking at the headlights. They're bright enough to make you think they're only a few miles away, but you can look on your phone. You can look at the flight software. You can tell how far away they are. It's amazing at how bright the headlight is. Granted, they look kind of orangish through the air, through the heat and the distortion of the atmosphere. But they do look a lot closer than what they really are. Granted, a lot of people in Lake Erie, near Lake Erie, like to say that those are UFOs because of the way the lights seem to fade off and on. But no, it's just the jet making adjustments, moving. It's actually the holding pattern off of where I'm at, would be off of Lake Erie, is about 25 miles. So that's the holding pattern for the both airports in Cleveland. So yeah, not UFOs. And I think that's kind of what these folks were seeing. Kimberly Slover in Wood Lake, California, but I think she was seeing a fighter jet. So it's probably not something you'd see all the time. And you have to be at the right angle to be looking down that exhaust like that. Yeah, but to me, it looks like some sort of conventional jet, or possibly the testing of a missile from a jet. but I think you'd see look a little different from that. Anyway, we talked about the fallout from the public congressional meeting on unidentified flying objects and unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs and UAPs, respectively, way back on May 17th of this year. That fallout is still glowing, and the topic remains hot as ever. People are still talking about it. People still want to continue to talk about it, and we're waiting for more stuff to come out. And now, the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum will be holding a live chat on UFOs and IFOs on Saturday, June 11th. IFOs are identified flying objects, which I find kind of interesting how they're going to talk about both UFOs and IFOs. Well, the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. is temporarily closed through this fall. They are doing their best to continue to reach out via the internet to continue to teach. However, the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center in Virginia, which is not too far away from D.C., it's just down the street. I don't understand why that's open, but the National Air and Space Museum is closed. But it's a D.C. thing, I suppose. The Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center in Virginia is open. The program of live chat UFOs and IFOs is presented through the Air and Space website as well as on YouTube Live at youtube.com/air and space. And you can also watch it live at the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center in Virginia. They don't say a whole lot about what it will cover when you're looking at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum website. All it really says is, quote, discover the history of UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and IFOs, identified objects, and learn about the report on unidentified aerial phenomena from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, unquote. The program is part of the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum's Soar Together Family Day, which takes place virtually on June 10th and 11th. And like I mentioned, it also takes place at the Udvar Hazy Center on June 11th, which is just directly south of Dulles International Airport. It's pretty much, it almost looks like it's on the airport grounds, but very close. And it's just west of Washington, D.C. Events at the center will take place from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and will include the live chat from 1 to 2. There will be music and collaborative songwriting sessions with Dr. Jim Thorne, hands-on activities and demonstrations. And on top of that, if that wasn't good enough, this is great. One of the highlights of this, I think, is at 2 p.m., so after you're done with the live chat, which they don't really say who's actually speaking. When I first read it, it kind of made it sound like it was the Director of National Intelligence, but it's really the report on unidentified aerial phenomena from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So I don't know who's leading that, who's going to be answering questions, if there's a panel or what. So I don't know. It sounds to me like it's going to be a little bit more skeptical, like they're going to be probably leaning more towards the identifiable thing. I mean, all the other unidentified stuff in the government's already out there, so it's pretty easy just to read off of the piece of paper that they have. But I think they're going to be talking about some explainable stuff during this conference. But yeah, on top of that, 2 p.m., right after the chat, there's going to be a free showing of the movie The Iron Giant. Probably one of the coolest alien movies for kids, I would think, of all time. Still cool. I'll sit and watch it. I love that movie. I think it's great. I think I actually own that. Probably VHS. But I do own it. It's in the Airbus IMAX theater, so pretty cool to see that. It's kind of fitting too of the government figures that come in and want to blow stuff up. To be on a first come first serve basis, so get in there quick. Registration is requested for the event, and you can find that link at the Air and Space website at airanspace.si.edu. And the description of the event on the Udvar Hazy Center says, quote, for years, people have looked to the skies and been fascinated by the topic of unidentified flying objects, also known as UFOs. During this family day, you'll get to explore what the aviation world considers a UFO and learn how and why they are studied. You'll also discover how the possibilities of UFOs have inspired creativity and the imagination through movies, stories, and songs. Unquote. The event is completely free, including the movie. Don't forget Iron Giant. Completely free. But obviously, you're going to have to get there. You have to pay for the gas, which is probably $7 a gallon in that area. Or you could just fly in the Dulles. Probably take an Uber right there. It's not that far. Just don't, just pack a light bag, just carry-on luggage. You'll still have to pay $15 for parking if you drive there. But if you Uber in, you're probably good to go. The museum that's attached to that is also free. And you're going to see a lot of really interesting stuff. That one's on my list. I've been to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, which is just absolutely phenomenal. But this one here, they've got a couple of hangars that you can go into, and it's incredible. They've got a Sopwith Camel from World War I, which I don't know. I'm a big aviation freak. I like planes and jets, and especially stuff from yesteryear. Flown one of those Sopwith Camels. Well, I mean, flown it on like Microsoft Flight Simulator, not for real, but it was a lot of fun. It's a pretty cool airplane. The first Air France Concorde is there in a hangar. You can walk up to it, kick the tires. Just can't light the fires. The second Learjet ever built is hanging from the rafters there as well as an SR-71 Blackbird, which they have. We've got an SR-71 in the Air and Space Museum, so I have seen that one before, but very cool to see. And also, they've got the Space Shuttle Discovery there as well, so you can see that for free. That's pretty cool. I've seen 2 space shuttles in my lifetime. I don't know if I've seen I can't remember if I've seen the Discovery, but at least 2 I've seen. Again, check out the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum for more information on listening in or submitting your questions to the live chat, which you can if you go to YouTube Live. So youtube.com/air and space on, what time is that? 1 o'clock this Saturday. So I'll be at work. That stinks. Really would like to listen to that. But I'm sure they'll have a breakdown of that. You can rewatch that as well. So yeah, check out the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum for more information on listening and submitting your questions to the live chat about UFOs, IFOs, as well as the report on unidentified aerial phenomena from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or National Unintelligence, however you want to look at that. MUFON, speaking of unintelligence, the Mutual UFO Network has released their sighting statistics for May of 2022. Last year, 2021, was not a good year for the release of their statistics, at least for my usage. Only 6 months of data was sent out. Never did get a hold of the other 6 months of data. So it's kind of hard to contrast, compare to last year's numbers when They only have so many of them, but so far this year, we're not seeing earth-shattering numbers with these sighting statistics at all. With, let's see, 599 total reports in January, which is not that impressive. If anything less than 1,000 a month, that's almost not even worth talking about. 426 in the United States that month, and February, even worse, 399. 399. Couldn't even break 400. And that's the lowest number I've seen since I've been documenting these numbers way back in 2015. February also had 330 sightings for the United States. March jumped up slightly with 417 total sightings and 338 in the U.S. April had 504 total sightings with 399 in the United States. Now here in the month of June, we look back at the month of May, because obviously we can't see what's going on. I mean, we could guess or we could look at some of them, but the totals aren't out for June, but they are out for May. And we'll see that MUFON has reported a total of 602 reports for last month. The last time they reported a number that high, at least that I have, October of 2021, with an even 600 reports. September of 2021 had 681, which might have been the high water mark for 2021. But again, I don't have all the months. Only got 6 of them. Of the 602 total reports from May, 483 originated from the United States. The next highest was the United Kingdom with 30. And of course, next month, I don't know, they could be challenged with the United States because of this. It's going to change. United Kingdom will be higher, probably still be second. But the Queen's Platinum Jubilee flyover showcased a bunch of people reported seeing UFOs on, I don't know if it was the same channel showing different angles, but obviously a physical object flying through the flyover at the Platinum Jubilee for the Queen. And it's funny, people zoomed in on it. Yeah, it looks like a ball when it's zoomed in. But when you zoom out and you watch it, I don't know how many UFOs flap their wings, but it was just a bird. I don't know why people get so excited about that stuff. People want to believe. But sometimes you just got to look at it for what it is. France was third, 24 reports. Canada had 21. Australia had 9. Belgium, 5. Mexico had 3, which I find hard to believe. But that's just what MUFON reports. Germany, Bahamas, India, Switzerland, and New Zealand had 2 reports each, and there were 17 other countries that only reported 1 each. Looking at the 483 U.S. reports, the number 1 state was California with 55. And of course, that's no real big deal. California leads the United States in population, so they should be number 1. We'll talk more about that here in a second. Florida was next with 47. Texas had 25. Washington and Pennsylvania had 22 each. That's Washington State. Illinois had 20. Arizona, Colorado, and North Carolina had 16 reports each. Missouri had 15. New Mexico, New York, and Ohio had 14 each. Georgia had 12. And Massachusetts, Arkansas, and Indiana had 11 each. Wisconsin had 10. And if I didn't name your state, we'll do better. You had less than 10. It's embarrassing. Slacker.com is kind of the central unit here. So MUFON sends out these emails once a month, if you're lucky. They send out more correspondence about their giant event coming up. I'm really tired of hearing about it personally. Yeah, I'm not going to that. MUFON Symposium, July 8th to the 10th, Denver, Colorado. It's the same old tired speaking troupe that they have pretty much every year. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, they do kind of a good job of breaking down some of the cases from that month. But you only hear about it once a month, and it's just a breakdown. They don't get excited about stuff during the year. They don't get a hold of the media. They don't turn any of this stuff in. But I mean, what's amazing about all this stuff is about these statistics, at least, is that despite how large of an organization MUFON is, MUFON has a presence in every U.S. state, has a presence in multiple countries around the world. It's headquartered here in Ohio, by the way, Cincinnati. But it's giant. There's every state has a state director. They have investigators in each state. Some of them, they divide the state into sections. Well, at least they used to. I don't know if they still do that, honestly. But there's so many people that work for MUFON, but you hardly ever hear anything about what they're doing or information. I just don't understand it. Like, why a giant organization like this? You know that they're I don't know if they're not really paying people. It's pretty much a volunteer basis, but with their leadership moving from out west to Cincinnati because of some of the internal problems that they've had, of course. And, you know, still, again, this giant organization, but you don't hear anything from them. However, NUFORC, which is funny because it's pretty much run by 3 people. There's a lot more news stories that come out about NUFORC than MUFON total. Although it's just about their sightings, their reports, which they do. What's the guy's name? Dave McDonald. That's his name. MUFON director Dave McDonald. He was the he was just below what's his name? The other guy who got arrested. But now he's taken over again. Dave McDonald. He's getting up there in age. I think he's in his 80s. They need some young blood. They truly do. Dave McDonald, leading MUFON. I do think they need some new young blood. Not going to do anything crazy, but I think they need some young guys. Younger guys. Maybe 40s. I'll volunteer. I'll run MUFON for a while. Couldn't do any worse. NUFORC, National UFO Reporting Center. Again, boasts a crew of like 3 people, I think. One's the webmaster. One's in charge of the organization. And another, I think, just answers the phones, I think. But not a single day goes by where somebody is writing a story about how many UFO sightings their state has. And that's all based on NUFORC's numbers, by the way. I just read one from Arizona that got reported today. It's the same old tired data, but people are using it over and over. And it gets them a lot of attention. The good thing and the bad thing here is these stories is it relies on the highest number of sightings per state. So states are bragging about being number 1, which is California, which is great because they have the highest population. So a lot more people will be excited about that than like Alaska. So since California leads the U.S. in population, of course, it's going to lead that list. It also typically leads the list for MUFON as well. MUFON, like I mentioned, they used to do the per capita sightings breakdowns, which I'd done that for a little while over the years on the show. back when their sightings were a little bit more, a little larger than 4, 5, 600, which is really nothing. When they were in the 12, 1500 a month, it's still technically, statistically insignificant. However, it was a little bit better than just a few hundred. But this NUFORC stuff, they're not really breaking things down anymore either. I saw that they used to. 2015, 2016, there was quite a few articles about the odds of seeing a UFO in a state or the per capita breakdown. And there was the most recent article was on stacker.com, August 9th, 2021, which talks about the states with the most UFO sightings according to NUFORC's data. California led the way with 10,333. That's a lot of sightings. I had to add up. I didn't add up MUFON's, but guess that seems like it's higher than MUFON's California total number. But using the most recent population statistics, you do the math, you carry the one, you take off your shoe and count your pinky toe. It's 26 out of every 100,000 people have reported a UFO in the state of California in the year 2021. Or maybe it was 2020, but either way, 26 out of every 100,000 people. It's not very many, I don't think. But that sounds impressive, right? 26 out of 100,000. We look at Florida, which is number 2 on the list. They have almost half. They've got 5,826 sightings, and they come close, but a little out ahead of California with 27 out of every 100,000 people making a report. Then we go to number 3 on the list, Washington State. They fall down to 4,351 sightings, a lot less, way less than half of California's. However, you add up their per capita, that's a whopping 57 out of 100,000 people, which is way more significant to California, but they're number 3 on the list. Even Arizona, which is number 7 on the list with 3,188 sightings, turn in 44 out of 100,000. Oregon, which is 12th on the list, 2,316 sightings, gives it a 55 out of 100,000. See, New Mexico, 27th on the list, with just 1,143 sightings, gives it a 54 out of 100,000. Idaho, number 30 on the list with 1,001 sightings. That equates to 56 out of every 100,000 people reporting a UFO. See how this math works? You can list the states, but when you do it, when you do the per capita, it really jumps out the states that are a little bit more significant than others. Maine, pretty far down there on the list as far as state population. And they only had 826 sightings. Not very many, right? That puts them 35th on the list. But that also gives them 61 out of 100,000 people. Alaska also matches the that total. Yeah, even with 448 reports. So almost half. And they're 45th on the list, but they match the per capita of Maine. New Hampshire, home of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, number 33 on the list, 863 sightings. Their per capita, 63. 63 out of 100,000 people reported a UFO in New Hampshire. Montana, just 39th on the list, 43rd in state population. Gives it they got a 67. Vermont, 44th on the list, just 459 reports. But that would come in with 73 out of 100,000. I do remember reading Vermont. They did the math too. They realized they were number one. They did release a story a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, on their per capita, that they have the best chances of spotting a UFO in the state of Vermont, which is true. But yeah, per capita numbers don't lie. However, the people behind the numbers sometimes lie or make things up, and that's part of the problem. Yes, MUFON has investigators. NUFORC will look into sightings, but they don't have boots on the ground. They don't have investigators doing all this stuff. They'll look at a sighting, they'll kind of think about it. But I think more slip through NUFORC than MUFON. So that's why NUFORC's numbers are higher. MUFON will actually look at sightings, and if it's determined that it's a flare or it's parachutists with flares at their feet, or it's a rocket launch, they take those numbers out, where I think NUFORC leaves them in. So, which is better? I don't know. But it's amazing that, NUFORC, with just minimal payroll, they get way more press coverage than MUFON, which is shame on them. Should be out there every day. Should be out there. They should be on the news. Who's leading the who's their public figure. I know they've gone through quite a few people. They do have a press contact. They do have who's that? Ron James is their director of media relations. They did make a statement about the UAP hearing, which is nothing major. But, yeah, they talk about their 10,000 reports a year. Well, California had more than 10,000, according to NUFORC. So why would we want to listen to MUFON? 1,100 volunteers nationwide, 46 international chapters, 4,600 members globally. Well, I remember when MUFON had over 10,000 members 10, 15 years ago. But, yeah, they're shrinking. And you would think that in 2022, we would be at the era where people would want to join these UFO investigation groups, and they would want to volunteer, and they would want to get out there and look. But MUFON, I don't. It's just not. It's just not there. It's not happening. And despite all this popularity with UFOs, I hear more about people starting Bigfoot groups. And I do UFO investigation groups, which is insane. Right now is the time to get into UFOs, UFO aeronautics, or understanding airplanes, or space science, astronomy, whatever you want to get into. Now's the time. But it seems like people are still investigating ghosts, the tired old troop, knocking on walls and stumbling around abandoned buildings with flashlights. But, yeah, we're talking about UFOs. The government is talking about UFOs. The government doesn't care about ghosts. There's no public hearing on ghosts. No public hearing on Bigfoot. I don't know. It's weird. The paranormal is always behind on stuff. But it's funny. We talk about the 80s and 90s, and even, 20 years ago, it was all of us crazy people hiding in the basements talking about UFOs. Now it's the government that are doing more of the work than these private organizations like MUFON. I hear more about state senators making statements than Dave McDonald making a statement. So MUFON, step up. I'll write you some stuff. You got to hire me, though, but you got to put me on the payroll, and I'll write some stuff for you guys. I'll get you out there. I know they've had plenty of good people that used to do stuff for them that have left under different circumstances. And MUFON has had a lot of internal conflict, internal issues. And there's a lot of people jockeying for positions still in that organization. So, yeah, they're not very healthy. But, man, you look at NUFORC, they're still plugging along. Almost the same amount of time, too, as MUFON, with a smaller crew. But who knows? We'll see what happens. What happens with the government organizations that research this stuff, and we'll see if other organizations, private or public, pop up in the interim. In the meantime, I'm going to let you guys go, and I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies and your ears in the woods and hair standing on the back of your neck. And always keep your mind slightly ajar. Don't let your brains fall out. Don't believe everything you see or hear or read, especially on them Facebook stuff. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.